if you look at the world's cross-border assets and liabilities, about $32 trillion pass through offshore financial centers. And the key thing, and he's just indicated that, is it's about avoidance of tax to minimize liability. And avoidance of tax is not a concept that began today.
Yeah.
It's old. It's based by the old English principle, what we call the Westminster principle.
Yeah.
And what that says basically is any rational man, and Trevor, you're expected to be rational, is supposed to arrange his affairs in such a manner that they reduce the amount to the exchequer. It's then the role of government world over to legislate on minimizing tax leaks. Tax avoidance has never been illegal. Tax evasion is illegal.
Yeah.
The key question is now morality. But my view has been, tax can never be a moral question. It's a legal issue. You cannot bring morality on the issue of taxation. Hence, you've got legislators putting statutes and laws in place to minimize the tax leakages, and it's an issue world over. So looking at the Pandora Papers, they've brought up information on various structures. If I pick one of them, if one of the former prime ministers in the UK, you have a flat that you want to buy in the UK, the flat is owned by an entity offshore, you buy the entity offshore and buy it online, and you save a couple of pounds. There's nothing illegal about that. You're a rational human being minimizing what's due to the exchequer.
All right, Omari, what do you think?
Well, the two experts, tax experts, have discussed so much about global tax regimes and financing of business. The question that we'll ask ourselves, how does it impact to the Kenyan country? Because the Pandora box are global, but they have a Kenyan angle to this angle. Is it proper? The Constitution prohibits any state officer from having an offshore account. That is the Kenyan Constitution of 2010. But it allows that only if there is legislation under the Parliamentary Act that will allow that and provide modalities of how to do that. Parliament as it is today, they've never enacted that law that deals with the question of opening of accounts by state officers. The head of state, President Uhuru Kenyatta, falls under that category. As the head of state, he is a state officer, therefore he cannot open an account outside this country. But when I read out the papers, either by mistake or by error or by design, they talk of President Uhuru Kenyatta's family, which really, in legal terms, there's nothing called the head of state's family. What is there is the mother of the president called Her Excellency Mama Ngina Kenyatta, the brother, the sisters, and the others. It is not expressly stating that it is President Uhuru Kenyatta who has the account. If they came out very clearly and narrowed to President Uhuru Kenyatta, then this will become a serious constitutional question that will be moving to court or moving to impeach the president for failure to comply with constitutional provisions. Does the family, the other members of the family, legally have a right to invest in the offshore account? Yes. But it is not even clear the actual position of Mama Ngina, whether she's a state officer or whether she benefits as a wife of the former head of state and the mother of the current head of state. There is a legal lacuna to define what a first family is. Do they move on that angle? So in my own view, what I'm thinking is that morally and religiously and in the public interest, there is a lot of pressure that is going to be exerted on President Uhuru Kenyatta and his family. Politically, because we are heading to the elections time, the other wing that is competing with President Uhuru Kenyatta are likely to turn this discussion into a political discussion. Then we are also going to raise a question about how does Kenya appear globally. Kenya seems to be leading in Africa with the collapse of the North African countries and the South African countries. Kenya seems to be moving up economically and in terms of being the spokesperson for Africa, and especially now that we are chairing the Security Council in the UN. So in my view is this thing should be looked from one, the political angle, which hurts President Uhuru Kenyatta badly and his family. The economic angle, the experts have said, there's nothing really wrong. If Mr. Omari does a very good case and is paid 500 billion, I will take them to where there are returns. Because the question is investment, the decision to investment is commercially centered, is selfishly centered to maximize profit. It is not a moral question for you to invest for the purpose of pleasing people. That is a preserve of government, that government must provide, government must invest to provide social services. Individuals don't invest for the purpose of providing social services. So on this angle, I think the pressure that President Uhuru Kenyatta is going to face will be momentous, but once he proves that he has no account there, it is his family that has an account, he'll be discharged.
Okay. When we want to jump in before and also explain to us what are offshore accounts anyway.
Thank you. I think, one, the world is flat. So you cannot look at Kenya as an island. Money in itself is a fast-moving consumer good. It's an FMCG. Okay? We abolished exchange controls as a country way back in 1990. Okay? What are offshore accounts? It's you having, in very layman terms, you having an account outside your home area, your country. So like, if you're an account outside Kenya, if you're an account in Uganda, that is an offshore account. If you're an account in Tanzania, that is an offshore account. If you're an account in Cayman Islands or the BVIs or Mauritius, it is an offshore. So in simplistic terms, offshore accounts is having an account outside your place of residence, the dominance in Kenya. If you look at the US, because you've got to follow the money, they enacted FATCA rules, whereby any US citizens around the world, if they're banking within the US citizen, you've got to transmit that data back into the US. And they became stringent in the application of that. And the IRS then became, in terms of just revenue, it became a revenue point. If you transact $1 million shillings or $10,000 in your account in cash, then you're flagged out of the Financial Services Center here in Kenya, for example, and globally, because then you've got sources of income and you're looked into. But soon, this conversation about offshore accounts will be mundane. Why? We've moved to cryptocurrency. That's opaque. Okay, so as we talk about foreign currencies right now, the world has morphed into cryptocurrency. Okay, and on cryptocurrency, it's a whole different ball game vis-a-vis, because unlike where you are, like now with the Pandora's box, you're seeing movement of funds, crypto, Bitcoins and the works operate in a whole different way. So the challenge then is to legislators and authorities globally to now leapfrog and start thinking, how do we now look into the issue of crypto, because the ship has sailed into a different level.
And let me bring in Reginald on this also. Reginald, you mentioned earlier on that it's not really illegal to have an offshore account or even offshore businesses, but the moral question is what you raise. But even if, say, the argument is that you repatriate all the wealth, is that how it works? Because it's not, the multiplier effect you're talking about doesn't just happen by you bringing your money here. It has to be invested in an actual company or something that then creates employment. Just bringing the money here doesn't make much of a difference.
You are correct, Trevor. It won't make much of a difference. I know there's an amnesty that was given for people to repatriate money. The danger of doing that is you end up cleaning dirty money. Once I repatriate it, it enters into the Kenyan banking system. Again, there's no law that stops me from taking it back outside. But what you'll have just done is facilitate me to actually launder my money. If I was keeping it outside for purposes of corruption or illicit trade and everything, now it has come through a formal banking system. It has come out of the formal banking system. I can take it back wherever I want to use it, or even, So if the money is then not used here locally, it just comes and sits in a bank account earning interest. The problem, as you have seen in our financial sector right now, in our financial system, we have a huge risk called the government, who is borrowing left, right, and center and crowding out everyone. So you will find the banks will not lend out that money to the private sector, who are supposed to now make investments with it. And the element of investment is what creates jobs. People are just parking money in government bonds. Government uses it to pay debt or pay their salaries, recurrent expenditure, and not really development. So bringing the money back to the country should not be the goal and the target. The goal and the target should be, okay, if someone wants to keep their money for tax purposes or whatever reasons that they think maybe they're getting better rates or competitive rates outside there, because there are two things, Trevor. You can have an offshore bank account and an offshore investment account. An offshore bank account is just a normal account. It allows you to deposit, withdraw, put money on fixed deposits and stuff like that. An offshore investment account allows you to hold different securities, shares, and all multi-currency investments. So people need to know that there are two different things there: offshore bank account and offshore investment account, which are operated by two different entities. So if that money is brought back as investment, either through PPPs or either through a company investing in their business, reinvesting in their business, expansion happens, and as expansion happens, aggregate consumption or demand increases in the economy. A bit complex, but there are ripple effects of it. So the end should not be repatriated. Because to repatriate, the person will just keep it in the bank account. The next question that people should be asking is it money that was sent to those offshore accounts legally, or is it money that was sent there illegally? Does this person have evidence to show that they actually earned this money from genuine purposes? Because then if you repatriate and you're not looking at the source of how did this person get 40, 60, 100 billion. And you know, these offshore accounts are not very cheap. They're also expensive to run. So also lifestyle audits have to come in there. So it's not just about bringing the money to sit in account, but one is, are we doing it to one, stop illicit trade, stop money laundering? Are we doing it to make sure that money comes back and goes into circulation in the economy and is not consumed by government borrowing through bonds and treasury bills? Because then it will be an exercise in futility. For example, the 1 trillion that came back to the country during the repatriation had no impact whatsoever on the economy. It came in and most probably went out. So the government needs to figure out, how do you create an environment to attract someone who's been keeping money, genuine money that is, offshore, to have investable projects internally here that give him a higher return than keeping their money in an offshore account. And for those who are doing it illegally, find ways of tracing all this illicit flow of currency out of the economy. I'll give you an example, Trevor, as I wind up. Yeah. Kenya has more banks than Egypt, than Nigeria and South Africa put together. Kenya has more banks than Nigeria and South Africa put together. And to give you perspective, Kenya is 3 times smaller than South Africa's economy, and Kenya is 4 times smaller than Nigeria's economy. Actually, if you put all the economies of East Africa together, of the EAC, they are not even 1/3 of Nigeria's economy. But Kenya has more banks Now, what you do with that information, now, Trevor, that one I'll leave it up to you.
That's an interesting perspective. But are we just dealing with an issue of perception here? Because I remember on the Monday report, I explained to Kenyans what an offshore account really is.
Yes.
And some of the reasons why someone might decide to have an offshore account.
Yes.
The bashing online from people like Akina Palwin Papi even right now, saying that we are encouraging people to have offshore accounts. But the reality really is here, if you can afford it, it's not illegal to have an offshore account.
There is no law that expressly makes it a criminal or civil offense to open an offshore account. There is no criminality in that.
I mean, we'll be going back into the
because when we are saying that we are moving to a global open market in terms of finances, that is a reality. What I'm more worried about is the doublespeak. This money, the source of this money that goes to the offshore account is really where a legal mind is questioning.
Yeah.
In this country, we have what we call the Asset Recovery Authority. And under the law of that asset and also the Money Laundering Act, it is your burden, the one who has the money, to prove source of that money. The super rich and politically connected have avoided that law, and they have taken their money where the asset recovery cannot deal with it. I've seen in the media the Director of Public Prosecution claiming that he will investigate. There are no treaties and there are no conventions to that effect to allow the DPP or anybody to follow that transactional money trail. So the question that now we are asking is, how can Parliament make the law to ensure compliance with the section and article of the Constitution says that whatever that was stolen from Kenyans, if a court is satisfied that that property was taken by Kenyans, the title that you have, the amount that you have, shall be forfeited to the state. So the question we are asking, when President Uhuru Kenyatta's family, then they must account the source of the money that they have stashed in those offshore accounts. If it is Trevor who has money in offshore account, let us know how much it is. Show what did you do. Were you a charcoal burner? Were you a mkokoteni pusher to raise 300 billion shillings within a span of 50 years? So this is likely to generate a serious discussion. And I totally don't agree with the experts in tax that this is right. Under Article 10 of the Constitution, and most countries have gone that question, and that's what America is doing, the aspect of transparency is going to destroy this type of offshore accounts. When everybody went to school, the only country people knew was Switzerland. That Switzerland was a safe haven. The laws changed in Switzerland out of international pressure and the European Union pressure.
Yeah.
Today, small islands, small entities of countries have now perfected that art. Is it going to last? I don't think this type of business is going to last. He has given a very good chronology of every year their papers. When retired President Kibaki came to power, the Kroll report was purely to check on the question of money outside the country. A report was brought into this country. Whether it was acted upon, we have never known why it was never acted upon. The small amount of trickle amount that came into the country did not have an impact on this country. So we are moving to an open society where Citizen TV is discussing a very serious family that formerly nobody could discuss these matters openly the way we are discussing. So in my own view, I think that we are now moving towards a new generation of investment. He has said about the cryptocurrency and the Bitcoin type of investment. How is our parliament prepared to deal with the global trends, international global trends that are coming? How is the Central Bank of Kenya moving towards a proactive approach in solving these issues? And me more specifically, the historical injustice and the restitution aspect, that if this money moved from this country because it was stolen from this country, that money must be returned into this country, and the perpetrators of those who stole are brought to book. But if it is a story to please everybody, a story that has been generated because we have elections this year, then that story nobody can, you can't form a really basis on that. And that's why, although we several don't agree with the DPP, here he has it very properly. It must be legal documents to form basis for a criminal or a legal investigation. It can't be just an emotional outpour that this thing is, and tell that friend of yours bashing you that really the country is no longer in those dark ages when discussions were held behind bedrooms. Today, the discussions are held live on Citizen TV.
Yeah, but remember, you see, there's also a very interesting perspective here from YN, who says that, so you're embracing offshore accounts, that we all ought to have one and do away with the local accounts. Then what happens to our economy? But these offshore accounts are not for everyone, right? It's just the same way not everybody has an account right now.
There you go. And look, the use of foreign accounts is legitimate. Within the international rules of AML, anti-money laundering. I concur. We need to have enhanced transparency so that you mitigate against accounts which are doing money laundering, crime, and drugs. Okay. The benefits, the OECD Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information, they've put benefit measures into place. They've not trickled down in Africa, okay? Among those initiatives is the automatic exchange of financial information, which allows government to gather and share bank accounts on foreign citizens maintained in their countries. What the US has done with FATCA rules. The key issue here, when you look at is, in 2019, we had an amnesty in Kenya on foreign income. And we ended up having $1 trillion shillings repatriated. Okay? At that point in time, which was about drawing a line in the sand. Okay? By the time you're doing these structures and they're in place, they've taken time to build. Like what Pandora Papers is doing now is unearthing things done 15, 20 years ago. They're only coming into light now in 2021. But in 2021, the environment is extremely different than it was in the 90s, or the early 2000s, where a lot of we professionals loved to do BVI structures, we used to do some Dutch anti structures. I mean, it's structures you create to minimize your liabilities. It's what multinationals and wealthy individuals seek our services or brains to put up these structures. There's nothing illegal with that. For me, boils down to, is tax a moral question? Because the only reason you'd set up a foreign account and a foreign structure is to minimize your tax liability, first. Secondly, minimize your exposure on political risk. Okay? If you are in Somalia, for example, would you invest your buckets in Somalia? No. You'd look for places to invest that protects your funds, so to speak. And that's what rational people are doing in terms of looking for these tax havens. And these countries don't operate in silos. This money moves through the banking system.
Yeah.
It's not table banking. It's not mattress banking. Okay? So there's visibility on how that goes through. And world over, with the way the world is structured, it's allowed, because I said 50% of global investment move through these vehicles.
Yeah.
When they're talking about banking in Kenya, yes, we've got quite a number of banks in this country. The CBK governor has been looking at merging banks and reducing the number of banks. But even with that high number of banks in Kenya, not all of us are banked in Kenya.
Yeah.
Yeah. We still need to get our people into the system, because into the banking system. Unlike advanced economies like South Africa, comparing their banking system with the Kenyan banking system, really, it's looking at apple and oranges.
Yeah, and Reginald, you know, the other issue that we're wondering about is money laundering. I mean, some of these offshore accounts have been used for just that exactly, yeah? So we can't run away from that fact either.
Which is true, Trevor. If we were to call a spade,
We seem to be having a challenge there with the Reginald. Let's try and get back to
Trevor.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm saying, if we were to call a spade, for most of these ones in Africa, especially when politicians are involved, it's normally not clean money. Truth be said. But was one of the main reasons why someone would want to have an offshore account, primarily in Africa, is because of volatility of foreign currency. Yeah, so you want to insulate yourself against the volatility of foreign currency, which you can always do by creating a dollar account in the economy that you are in anyway. But if it was genuine money, trust me, central bank will have a track record of that money, because that money will have left your account here and gone to your account offshore. Yeah, so there can easily be a trail of the money entering your bank account going to the offshore account. But the reason why there's no transparency is people have money in offshore accounts, which the banking system in the country cannot trace, because that money did not come through the banking process. So when you look at the African equation, all the way from independence for many African countries, and unfortunately, institutions like the World Bank, IMF, and all those other guys, and these DFIs, are also a part problem to play in that. The reason why Africa has a very high foreign and external debt is that is how you can externalize money before it even reaches the country. Remember, there was a time where there was noise on what happened to a certain Eurobond money. Can it be traced back? It was put in some accounts in the US, and up to now there's no clarity on how did that money actually move. Did it actually reach the consolidated account? And we could not prove that. So find most of this illicit money, especially for people that are in government, it is actually done through foreign aid and foreign debt. So that money never actually reaches the country for it to be externalized. Because if you externalize it from inside Kenya, the banking system has records, which is very robust. You'll either do a SWIFT, you do a transfer, or whatever, but those records will be there. But if you come and look and say, how much money has left the country through the normal channels vis-a-vis the money that is held by Kenyans in offshore accounts, then that brings to light whether that money is actually proper and whether it is actually clean, so to speak. People who open offshore accounts and offshore investment accounts, most of them don't do it in their names. They do it in shell company names, also offshore companies registered in those areas, one for tax purposes, but also to mask ownership. I think Kenya has a beneficial ownership law now that I'm lost again.
No, you're still, we can still hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if we are to be fair, for most of the offshore accounts held in Africa or in Kenya, I don't think most of them are from clean money. Let's just be honest. Most of them are not from clean money. And like the advocate has said, the DPP might say he wants to investigate, but truth be said, it is a hard job for him to do, especially if that money did not originate here, because then you have no paper trail of that money at all.
Yeah, but there's also some people who say that there are tax havens in those places. How does that work?
So a tax haven only benefits you if you're a business or you're a corporate. So I might want to start a company, and I say I'll go register my company in Mauritius or in the Cayman Islands or the British Isles or Jersey. Yeah, so there are many. It's no longer Switzerland alone. These countries offer you either 0 to no tax or very minimal tax, like 1% or 3% of that nature. So I'm doing business around the world, and because of different tax regimes, I'll then maybe register my business as a business that is in Mauritius, and if there's a double tax treaty, I'll end up paying double tax from the country where I am registered. I know the Finance Act this year has tried to curb that and mentioned an element of 50% of, there are a number of bills that have been put in the Finance Act of this year, the multinational enterprise bill, the registered trust bill, beneficial ownership and the permanent residence bills that try to curb that. Because what I would do is register in Cayman Island, register in the British Isles. We have a double tax treaty with the country that I'm operating in. So when I am taxed, or where I do not have a double tax treaty. So if I have a double tax treaty, Kenya says, okay, you'll be taxed from Mauritius, but the tax rate in Mauritius is 1%. Yeah? So it benefits me. So it's a tax haven. If we don't have a double tax treaty, I'll only be taxed in Kenya, but I will have no tax from the place that I have registered, which is tax, especially tax avoidance or minimizing your tax bill, which is legal, so to speak. So that's how tax havens work. And the finance bill this year tried to curb that and reduce those thresholds so that at least most of the tax is actually paid inside the country. Because multinationals will just repatriate all of it as dividends, and the tax on dividends was 5%. So that means a bank like Stanchart, which is wholly owned from outside, could make a profit and repatriate all their profits as dividends, and they'll only pay 5% instead of paying tax of 30%. Or Coca-Cola would lend its company here money, so to speak, and Coca-Cola is paying interest payments back to them, and interest is normally removed before you calculate tax. So the law has also been changed, capping it to 30% of revenue. So you find some people who have interest payments which are double their the revenue that has been earned. So that's how tax havens work. Purely legal. So the problem is not with the companies that are doing it. It's the legislation in the in-house country that has to try and curb those gaps. And Kenya has done some bit of work on it. Okay.
Mwema, how does it work? This tax haven you keep talking about.
Tax haven, I think, as a preamble, it's not illegal to set up a company in a tax haven, either an individual or a corporation or a company. We've not put laws against that. Okay? The way it works is you set up if you're expanding internationally, you look for a vehicle in a favorable tax jurisdiction to channel your investment, and largely there are countries that have a lower tax rate compared to a rate of 30%. You'll find countries that our effective rate of 3%, 15%, they used to do investments. The purpose of tax haven, because remember, the dollar today that we're demanding be invested in Kenya, it's the same dollar that China once invested in the country. It's the same dollar that Spain once invested in their country. So it is, where does it get the most return? If you're given an opportunity as an individual, and there are ways within the law that you can reduce your tax liability, why would you pay more money to the exchequer? Why? All of us, given a chance within the law, would love to reduce tax liability paid to the exchequer.
Yeah.
And that's why then we've got parliamentarians, the National Treasury and the Carrier and the Revenue Authority, then coming up with laws to seal these tax loopholes of the so-called tax avoidance. Within the Tax Procedures Act, there's a penalty of about 20% for tax avoidance.
Yeah.
But question is, what really is tax avoidance? When you plan your affairs in such a way that you reduce your liability to the taxman, that's tax planning.
Yeah.
Okay. Today, working for Citizen, Trevor, you decide to form a company called Trevor Limited. Then you remove yourself from all the perks and you're no longer an employee of Citizen. Form a company called Trevor Limited. And then Citizen contracts Trevor Limited as an entity that then provides, and it's Trevor Limited, the entity that provides services to Citizen. Trevor Ombeche then, on this entity now, income comes, billings across from Trevor Limited into Citizen, straight up. For his math purposes, $1 million shillings. That is the income. If right now, as an employee of Citizen, straight up, 30% goes to government, and net to bank, you get 700,000. But when you form a legal entity now,
Yeah.
you're able now to tax plan and arrange such that the expenses get in Trevor Mbija into place to pay and this presenter. And immediately, just that income is $1 million, you put in expenses relating what we call the wholly and exclusively incurred in getting that income.
Yeah.
Be it your wardrobe, in there, be it your nice funky MacBook, get a deduction in there as an expense. The motor vehicle comes in as an entity and you're taxed on 2% initial cost, and you reduce the expenses.
Yeah.
What goes across now and net to bank to yourself is a different amount. It's rational. It's allowed to do that within the law.
Okay. Omari?
Well,
Are you buying this argument?
I don't seem to agree with them.
Yeah.
Totally, because the question that is there is, in terms of investment, the Kenyan law is that the amount we borrow from outside this country, that debate should go to Parliament. To date, I tend to think that much of these, Trevor, what you call foreign loans, that we have money from China, we have money from which country, might be the same money Kenya is borrowing. The money belongs to Kenyans.
Yeah.
It is hidden elsewhere, called a Chinese loan. That is what we borrow, and we pay heavily for that. So the justification that there should be non-disclosure of information is not based on any law that works for a country.
Yeah.
The question of the multinational companies that come and invest here, do their business and repatriate their profits, the law is very settled. The amount they will take, what Kenya will take tax from. Why shall we allow our money, and this money majority comes from Africa? Africa is too poor. Reason being that it has taken its wealth outside other countries. And I strongly believe that that is the money that we are borrowing and paying to build SGR and other entities, while we should be investing this money here. Number two, if the question is about trying to reduce the tax you pay to this country, why can't the Kenyan government, the Treasury, the CBK and Parliament reduce on tax as an incentive for people not to go and keep their money in both countries? As a lawyer, the question you ask yourself, when people die in this country and they never disclose who the next of kin are, mostly those properties disappear. A reason why we have set an authority for the unclaimed assets authority to deal with properties that are not known who the owner is. When we have nominees as the face of this Kenyan money in Maldives, in those countries, when that owner of the money, and especially because these are political, technocratic bureaucrats who steal our money, they take them there. When they die out of COVID, and the nominee is not a Kenyan, the nominee is not even known, is that not wealth going to disappear? And never shall it come back to Kenya forever. So those risks, to me, make that if we can say, and I'm advising the central bank for free, if they can make legislation that if you have $1 trillion shillings, push it to the central bank, we will only tax 1%, similar to that country. When that money will be here, it will be loaned to KRA, it will be loaned to SGR to be utilized. We can not continuously talk without moving forward. It's a reality, there are offshore accounts. It's a reality, financial structures worldwide are financed that way. How do we become as a country ingenious and develop our own way to ensure that this money does not leave this country? So in my own view, I don't think that their model, is their justification makes any tax and patriotic sense to this country. But it might make an international perspective from that angle.
Yeah, now you bring in the patriotism, and Kazutu, let me bring you in on that one now. And it's now a moral issue. I mean, patriotism and pure business. Which one would you go for if you are able to actually do this business abroad? I mean, as a Kenyan, if you have the chance, would you then just decide to invest here or go to a place that gives you tax incentives?
As an individual, definitely number one, what you want to do, you want to try and minimize your tax on your money, because you're making an investment. Or I'm doing business. I want to reduce my costs as much as possible. So whether I'm even doing it here, you'll find I will try and use all means and methods, all allowable deductions to try and reduce my what I pay for tax. When you talk about patriotism, Trevor, the issue is, if you look at the majority of the people that will have these offshore accounts, there are people that are in leadership, people that are in either politics or people that are in government. Ideally, there are people that have the muscles to try and do some of these things. So it will be a bit foolhardy to try and push patriotism on individual companies and businesses when our leadership is actually the main problem. And because we have a leadership that comes into power specifically with the desire to come and steal, or so to speak, they actually do not want to come into power to come and serve, but actually coming to power to find the ways of enriching themselves. So we have a serious leadership problem that needs to be sorted out so that we can start having policies that actually grow the economy. Most of the corruption that happens in the country is actually, it's done properly. What do I mean by it's done properly? It's done through the budget. By the time the money is being stolen, all these funny fictitious projects that don't have any benefit for us have already been budgeted for. So by the time the money is being spent by the exchequer, you'll realize it is genuine money going to a project which has been maybe inflated 3-4 times. So that way, you'll find the problem starts from the top, so to speak, from the guys who are running the country. Do they have a heart for the country? Do they have a plan for the country? Do they believe in the country? But when you have leadership that have offshore accounts, then it starts begging the question of, do they actually believe in what they're doing? Do they actually believe in that this country can grow and they can become wealthy with their investments that are here? So investment opportunities need to be created. The government needs to create a conducive environment. The macroeconomics is a bit complex, so we can't just say reduce tax to this amount. We are already in a situation where we are heavily indebted. and we have to pay that debt, especially domestic. Even forget external debt. Our main problem in Kenya is actually not even external debt, is our internal debt. Look at the amount of money that we are paying to internal debt vis-a-vis what we are paying to external debt. What we are paying to internal debt is even 3 or 4 times more. And this money is going back to the banks, to the pension funds and all, but mostly to the banks. So the owners of capital are getting richer, and the people that don't have capital, like you and me, Trevor, we are laborers. Our only form of remuneration is the salary we get. Our salaries have not been increasing, they have been reducing actually, but the owners of capital have been getting richer and richer. And that economic model has to change in the country. So you find the few rich people are now protecting, their wealth, putting it offshore, putting it in a shell company's name so that you cannot link it back to them in case anything happens here, considering most of it is not clean money, then that money will be safe. I'll save my 5-6 years in prison, come out, leave the country, have $1 billion, 20 billion somewhere else. Because honestly, if you're doing genuine business in a genuine country, why do you need to mask the identity of the business, mask the identity of the company, register it in some island which you have never been, because you don't actually need to go there to open that account? So yeah, I think patriotism needs to start from the leadership. It needs to start from the people that we put into power. And their actions determine whether they actually have a heart for the country. But if you are a leader, then you are touching everything outside the country, then it begs the question whether you actually have a belief in the country that you are leading.
All right, I have to take a quick break. When we come back, we're still talking about the offshore accounts and the businesses. Mwema, what does it really take to run an offshore account? I mean, how much do you need to be worth? Can a basic journalist like me have one? We'll come to that in just a bit. Keep your views coming at Trevor Media at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We're back in a short while.